Hi, I'm Tony Northrup, and for my Lightroom video training series, I'm going to talk about the book module, which allows you to make your own picture book. You can actually get it physically printed, and it makes a fantastic gift. It's such a convenient way to kind of go through your memories. I love to make a book for weddings that I shoot, or family vacations, or events like birthday parties even. They're not that expensive, they look fantastic, and people love them if you give them as gifts. Lightroom has a module built into it that allows you to do this very easily and then get it printed through a service called Blurb. Now, they're printing through Blurb because Adobe has a relationship with Blurb. It's not the only way to get a photo book printed, but it is the only way to get it printed using Adobe Lightroom. That might not be the way you want to do it though. There are a lot of companies out there that will make photo books of different qualities. All you would have to do is take your pictures and export them from Lightroom as JPEGs and then drag them into the website. They all each have their individual tools that allow you to build a photo book according to their specifications. Now, technically, you can build a photo book for anybody using Adobe Lightroom by exporting it as a PDF. That's a big file that looks like a document that you could then upload. But I wouldn't do that. I would instead use each company's custom tool to build a photo book because that'll make sure that you're within their printing specifications. Just kind of works out better that way. But just in case you do want to make a photo book with Blurb, the tools in Adobe Lightroom are pretty easy to use, and it's so convenient that it's integrated right into Lightroom. So let's take a look at the app now. I have a catalog here with just 29 pictures from a recent trip to Montana. So I'll select the book module here, and you can see Lightroom immediately starts creating a book from my pictures. You can see that Lightroom automatically laid out a book for me, putting one picture on the right side of each set of 2 pages. By having pictures only on the right page, it means that no picture will be front and back on a single piece of paper. And that can just improve your picture quality because sometimes a picture printed on the back side will also be visible. So it's kind of common to do it only on the right side unless you use really high-grade paper. So other printing services might provide better quality paper. It depends on the service that you use and the quality of the paper, so it can vary, but they're suggesting one picture per each 2-sided piece of paper, and you might want to do that if you don't want to sacrifice quality at all. You can use that white piece of paper for a caption though. Let's start by talking about how you can arrange your pages. Adobe just kind of threw everything in a random order, but if you're making a book, you're also telling a story. And you might want to change the order in which those pictures appear or simply eliminate some. You can also arrange it so that there are multiple pictures per page depending on the story you want to tell or how important a given picture is. So let's jump back into Lightroom. I can easily rearrange pictures. For example, if this picture should be on the first page, I can just grab it and move it up there. Notice that it picked this picture for the cover. This is the front cover and the back cover is labeled here. If I change my mind, it's as easy as dragging another picture up here. Now, I probably don't want a single picture to be in there multiple times, as it did here, so it's easy for me to select it and just delete it. I would want to delete this one too and just get rid of the entire set. I'll control-click them both, and then right-click it and select Remove Pages. You can also control the layout of pictures within a single page. The easiest way to do this is just by right-clicking. So I'll select this and then right-click it and select Zoom Photo to Fit Cell. And I want you to look at the white borders on the top and bottom here. So that zooms in and does what they call bleeds to the edge of the page. Now I can easily grab the picture here and scroll it a little bit to the left and right just to control the composition. If you look closely at the page, I'll zoom in by clicking this Spread View button down here. You can see some lines here, and these lines are basically indicating where it might be cropped depending on how it's cut. So you don't really want to go outside of those lines with any part of the picture that's important to the composition. Just know that the way they cut the paper can vary a little bit. It's not always so precise, but generally what you see is what you get. It just might cut in a little bit more than you expect. In the gutter here in the middle, you won't necessarily see the details either because the pages fold in and kind of disappear and will be in shadow of the other page. So you don't want any important details outside of this box, basically. So let's switch back to the multi-page view, and I'll go over how to put multiple pictures on a single page. For example, on this page, I'll select the page, and then I'll click this little drop-down arrow here, and I can select from a variety of different layouts. Scroll this list and pick the layout that I want. As I scroll through this list, you can see these are all types of the one photo page type. So these are all showing one photo, but some of them have, for example, room for text. That's what these lines are. If you want, say, 4 photos, they have a variety of different layouts for you. You should pick the one that works best for the story that you're trying to tell. Let's go ahead and pick this option down here, which shows 2 bigger pictures and 2 smaller pictures, 2 vertical and 2 horizontal. So I'll drag a related picture into the horizontal spot here, and it fills it up. And then I'll drag in a couple of vertical pictures. And if we zoom back in to look at the page now, you can see it left a little bit of white space here, but I can easily fix that just by clicking the picture and then sliding the zoom a little bit until all the white space disappears. And of course I can drag it to kind of compose the picture. Some of these have been cropped a little bit, so I still have the option to drag them around a little bit depending on the composition. All right, so now I've converted that 1 picture page to a nice 4 picture page. Jump back into the multi-page view here. You can see they provide a great deal of options for different page layouts. They also have some more creative options like portfolio, travel, wedding, as well as pages just meant to show text. So you can tell your story with words and not just pictures. You can also add additional pages in case you want to insert pictures. You can simply right-click and click Add Page. As you can see, this added a 2-page spread, so now I can just drag in a new picture. It could be from anywhere else in my catalog, and I'll have it in there. When you remove a page, it's not the 2-page spread necessarily, so you might have to remove 2 separate pages if you want to get rid of the entire spread. Now let's go over the Book Settings panel in the Book module. Up here at the top, our first option is the service that we want to use to print the book. And by default, it's Blurb, which, as I mentioned, is a third-party service that Adobe has partnered with. I'm sure they get a cut of it, so it's not like they're recommending it in an unbiased way. You also have the option of printing your book to a PDF or a JPEG. As I said, in theory, you could send the PDF off to anybody, but anybody who prints photo books probably also has an app that allows you to create the photo books, and you should just go use that instead of this. So I'm only recommending this if you are planning to print with Blurb, but they sure make it easy. So it is pretty convenient. You can select the size of the book here. Most of the sizes are 8x10, but you can go for a larger format. And Lightroom is pretty good about automatically laying out your pictures for the larger format. 8x10 is the size of the books that I usually use for instructions, but it's kind of small for a photo book. I really recommend going for one of the larger sizes. If you go for one of the square sizes, that can kind of constrict your compositions if you want to bleed to the edges. So if you go for like a 12x12 square, it can be uncomfortable since your camera doesn't shoot square pictures. You either end up blending multiple pictures together on a page to get the aspect ratio that you want, or you end up leaving letterboxing, basically white spaces at the top or sides of the picture to get the composition that you need. They have an option here for different paper types. Luster is a shiny coating, matte is non-reflective coating. Luster will generally look better, more photo-like. The higher end papers are going to look a little bit better. The Proline Uncoated is just paper that doesn't have a sheen to it, and you can also pick Proline Pearl Photo. Lightroom's going to show you the difference in the prices. So Pearl Photo is kind of the highest end page type, and you can see for this book it would cost $102. If I go for standard, price drops down to $67, or the premium luster is $78. So it's nice that you can price the options right here live in Lightroom. Another little trick of Blurb is they add an ad. They put an ad on your last page. So I'll zoom in here and you can see what it looks like. It just says Blurb and has a little URL there. This option controls that, logo page on. If I set it to none, then the price goes up substantially. So it's $95 without the logo or $77 with the logo. They give you like a $10 to $15 discount basically for putting the logo on the last page. For me, it would be totally worth it to save 10 or 15 bucks to put their ad, but it wouldn't exactly look professional, especially if you were doing this for a client, like for a wedding. Now let's go over the auto layout panel in the book module. The auto layout panel allows you to easily kind of reorganize based on one of the presets here. So by default, it's picked left blank, write one photo and caption. And that's why all these left pages are blank. Though I've made a change and deleted a picture, you can see it's a little messed up. If you feel like just starting over, click Clear Layout and then click Auto Layout. And it will automatically redo it for you. So this is what the proper left blank, right one photo looks like. We can also do one photo per page, which fills up every single page. So I'll select that, clear the layout, and then do auto layout. And now we have every single page filled with a picture. Now we'll talk about the page panel in the book module in Lightroom. I'll hide away the book settings and auto layout panels, and now under page you can see the option to add page numbers. Page numbers aren't something you really need in a photo book, because it's not like you need to tell somebody over the phone, like, go to page 7 now. Nor are you really keeping track of which page you're working on. But maybe it makes it look like a more serious book, or maybe it's 200 pages and you really do need those page numbers. You can select that checkbox and choose where you want the page numbers to be. The bottom corner where it's added it is pretty traditional. The page panel also gives you the option that I showed you earlier from the right-click menus for changing the options for whatever the selected page is. So if I wanted to change this particular page, I would select it and then click this drop list and maybe go to a 2-page spread here or a text page. Here we'll select this one. And you can see that it changed the layout, requiring me to drag in a different picture to fill that empty spot. Now I'll quickly show you the guides panel in the book module. Hide away the page panel here, and you can see the guides, as I mentioned, basically tell you where it's going to crop. We'll zoom in a little bit so we can see them a little more clearly, but look at this line here. If I turn off show guides, it just kind of disappears and gives you a better sense for what the printed book will actually look like, but doesn't necessarily show you where it might be cutting or where you might not be able to see the picture as easily. The page bleed is the part of the page where if your picture goes near that, it definitely needs to go off. The text safe area is the part of the page where you can put text and not have to worry about the page being cut and having an uncomfortable margin. So you always want your text to be in the safe area, but if you use the page layout suggestions that Lightroom provides, it shouldn't be an issue. The photo cells basically just highlight pictures, so I'll just remove that picture by pressing the delete key. And if I turn off photo cells, you can see instead of just showing the gray marker there with a plus sign in it, it just shows a white spot. So let's put another picture in there. Finally, if you select filler text, it will fill in basically what we call ipsum lorem in the publishing industry. So let me change the layout of this page to something with text. And you can see it's not literally ipsum lorem, but it does provide some filler text. Now let's go over the cell panel of the book module in Lightroom. The cell panel, close up the guides and page panels here, just shows the amount of padding that you can see in the picture. So let's go back to the page view here and we'll add some padding to it. That's basically like a margin around the picture. And you know, some of the layouts use this and some don't. This is pretty much going to be defined by whatever layout you select, but I'm not going to want a padding here. If you feel like you want a margin around your picture, you would select the padding option and drag it to the right. But for the most part, you really aren't going to need it. I don't know why you'd ever want to separate the left and right margins. It would look odd, but you can do that if you just want to change the composition a little bit and squeeze in, say, the right and the bottom differently than the other sides. Now I'll show you the text panel in the book module in Lightroom. The text panel gives you some control over the text. So I'll close up these other panels that we don't need at the moment. And let's add some photo text here into this very ugly page. Zoom in so we can see the page a little bit bigger. Let's zoom in even further. And you know what? I'll close this down just so we can see it. Now you can see it's added photo text in because I selected the photo text checkbox. If I clear it, it disappears. If I add it, there it is. So now that it's there, I can move it around and start typing my text. Now, with the text selected over here, I can control the appearance of the text using this particular panel. Custom text means I can type whatever I want, or I could automatically add in some metadata. For example, I could select exposure and it will show the information from the picture itself. Let's go back to custom text and set this back to ipsum lorem. Now you can see the align with photo checkbox is selected, that means it's always going to be centered on the picture, and that's really what you want. You can also see that it's centering it but ignoring the borders over here, so it's not going into the gutter of the page. You can turn this align with photo checkbox off if you want it to align with the page instead of the photo. Rather than dragging it up and down, you can also use this slider. If you do select align with photo, it has options for whether the text is above or below the point here. So you could technically slide it up on the top or even put it over the picture if that's what you wanted. Now notice I'm just kind of controlling the text box. I'm not changing the color of it. That's done with the panel that we'll discuss next, the type panel. You can also select text for the page by selecting the page text checkbox. This appears at the same place on all the pages that you've selected, and you can move it from the top to the bottom of the page. Now I'll cover the type panel of the book module in Lightroom. The type panel allows you to actually control the fonts that you're working with. So we'll continue this, and let's just say we want to make it bigger. That's going to be the point size here for the character. So I'll just drag this slider and make it nice and big because my name is really important in the book. You can control the opacity of it, and that's going to mean more if the text is actually over the picture. So as I'll slide it up here and clear off the selection, you can see it looks almost black now, but if I bring the opacity down, well, you have to select the text to do that. Select it and then bring the opacity down. You can see that you can start to see through it. Holding that down, you can preview it a little bit better. So that just lets your picture shine through. You can also select options for left justifying, centering it, moving it over to the right, or if you have an entire paragraph of text, there are some justification options better suited for paragraphs. You can also vertically center it, which options that will seem more obvious when you're working with actual paragraphs of text. So basically, simple word processing style formatting options are found on the type panel here. You can also change your font to whatever it is that you decide. Go as crazy as you want, right? It's for fun. There's also some presets here. You don't necessarily need to use any of these, but you can. There's some fancy stuff for a wedding. And if you end up customizing it, making it big, changing the opacity, you can always save your own preset by clicking this list and then selecting Save Current Settings as New Preset. We'll call it Tony's Favorite. Now, if I happen to screw this up, I could easily jump back to Tony's Favorite. Now we'll cover the background panel in the book module of Lightroom. The background panel here selects the background that will appear behind everything. And if you choose to have your pictures fill the entire page, you're never going to notice this. But if there's any bit of white space on any of the pages, the background will shine through. And by default, the background is just solid white. It says drop photo here, but you won't really see that. Now, you do have the option of selecting other types of more creative backgrounds. So, for example, for travels and weddings, we see some here that are a little bit fancier and kind of suit the mood. So let's go with this cool map option here. And now you can see these pages that have white space on them show that map shining through. So just kind of cool options. You can also, of course, select your own style. Once you've found a picture you like, you can kind of tweak it. So the opacity will control how bright it shows up. We can drag it all the way to the right to show it as strongly as possible, or something lighter than that. You don't want it to be too distracting. You want it to be more of like a watermark in the traditional sense of the term. You can also change the color by clicking this box and then selecting whatever color you want. So let's say we want it to be just a little bit blue. It doesn't need to be too intense of a blue. Drag it down just a little bit. And now you see just kind of a hint of the blue color there. You know, if I drag it all the way up, it'll be a little bit more obvious. Now, with the opacity turned off, it shows up more strongly, and you can see that blue influence in there. You can also control the background color of the page. You pretty much want to go with white, but if you were really crazy, you could go with a light shade of yellow. Now let's talk about how to save your newly created photo book in Lightroom. Jumping back into Lightroom, there's the option for Create Saved Book. It's pretty much that easy. So we'll just call this Montana Trip. Now it's going to save it as a collection. So if you already had a collection that you wanted to save it inside of, you could select the inside checkbox and then save it. Otherwise, this is exactly like creating any other collection. Once I create it, you can see it's a collection with a special icon here, the little book icon. Now, if I go over to something, it's a different collection, it's very easy for me to jump back to the book, including any formatting changes that I've set. One last step in creating your book is exporting it. This includes printing it or sending it off to a different printer. Let's jump into Lightroom and I'll show you how to do it with Blurb. There's a big button, Send Book to Blurb. Doesn't get much easier than that, right? Once you click this, you're going to have to log into Blurb, which means signing in for a password. And this is going to mostly happen on Blurb's website. So the actual steps from here are going to be different. But of course, it'll prompt you for a credit card to pay for it and approve everything. And then in a few days or a week, you'll actually get your book. Now, if you don't want to go through Blurb, but you do want to use Lightroom, again, not something I really recommend. Go up to the book settings and instead of Blurb, select PDF. And now this button changes to Export Book to PDF. So we'll actually make a PDF file here and drop it right in the root of my D drive. And I'll call it the Montana book and then click Save. So now that the export is finished, I'll open up Explorer and look at the two files that it made. One PDF for the cover and one for the interior. Jump into Explorer here and I'll open up the cover file first. You can see the back on the left and then the front cover on the right. Let's close that and I'll open up the interior file. Zoom back a little bit and you can see these are each individual pages that it's showing me. In theory, this is ready to set off to your printer, but in practice, most places that print photo books will have an app that helps you conform specifically to their printing requirements, so you might not necessarily find this that useful. In summary, the book module in Lightroom is really useful if you want to make a blurb photo book, and it's a really quick and easy way to do it. You might find a better value out there if you shop around a little bit, but it's certainly the easiest way to get your pictures from Lightroom into a beautiful book that makes a wonderful gift with pictures of a birthday party or a wedding or a family vacation. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions for me, please don't hesitate to send me an email over at tony@northrup.org. Thanks.